Sup gamers? Welcome back to more commentary. This time it's not going to be a live commentary because I have tried several times to get this live commentary to work, and every single time I keep getting distracted and not getting my full points across as clear as I would like to. And because of that, I've decided to take on this format, which I usually save for my Sojourner Light channel, but I figured was enough of a focused topic for me to be able to share here in a similar fashion to the video where I'm talking about what is Deathslinger good at, where I had a couple of bullet points, and I just kind of talked about those bullet points in detail from there. The first thing I want to talk about, of course, is the game that you have in the background there. It's Deadlock. Now, a lot of you might not know this, but my video gaming history pretty much starts with League of Legends, and after I stopped playing that game, I didn't realize, but until I started playing Deadlock, that I was looking for another MOBA with which to fill that void. And I have found that MOBA, and that is in Deadlock. You might think, like, well, I haven't heard of this game in a while, a dead game, yada yada. And the truth of the matter is, the reason why you haven't heard about this game is probably because it's still in early development. It's a MOBA being developed by Valve. I find it really fun. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of really complex mechanics in it to learn. To start with, I'm sure that as you get better at the game as well, it starts to fall apart a little bit, but it's still in early development. There's a purported roster that Valve wants to hit with this game, a release roster of around 50 heroes. And I think at the moment we're looking at maybe 20-something? I'd have to double check really to make sure on that, but it's a third-person MOBA, so you have like a lane phase, but you are like a third-person shooter, but you have abilities that don't take any resources, they just take cooldowns, and all the items that you can get will increase the abilities of your character. And the thing that I really like about Deadlock, just in general as a game, is that it has the ability to... you can play your characters in a variety of ways. Now, some ways are a lot stronger than others, but it doesn't mean that there aren't viable alternate strategies for specific characters. And it usually centers around a lot around working on one specific ability or aspect of the character. So, for example, Holiday, who is this cowboy kind of looking character, or cowgirl I should say, has these barrels that she rolls out, and if she shoots them or if they run into a wall and detonate, they explode in an area and then also knock up anybody that they hit. And then she also has a passive ability on her third slot that makes it whenever she headshots somebody, they get slowed down and take bonus damage. And so people will... the most standard way to play Holiday is to try and spec around ability damage to make those barrels do as much damage as physically possible and be really disruptive in team fights. But some people have also built her around her passive ability where she deals bonus damage periodically on headshots, and so you then become like a gunslinger. You just shred people once you land a headshot and then have their resistance reduced because of the items that you can build. And so you're never really locked into one specific play style. And while characters, you can have good team comps, and some characters are significantly better than others, especially with it being in its early development phase, in its and not everyone has exactly their natural counters in the characters. The game itself feels very dynamic, because some games you might build for this one item, in another game you might build this item that amplifies a different ability, and there's a bunch of different ways to play it. There's also a level of verticality in the map that you don't really see from things like Smite, which is really cool, so you can use vertical locations to your advantage, but then the higher up you go, sometimes you're also going to find yourself in much more vulnerable locations. So you have to be really careful with the way that you choose to spend your time on the map, and I think that that's immensely creative. I am really looking forward to the future of this game, and I find it really funny that I'm enjoying this game a lot, because it's a game that is so early in development that basically anyone who is here in this closed beta is here because they got invited by a friend. There is no real open beta. You have to be invited to and have a key with which to access this game. And even with that limited access, there are some 7,000 people. You can go look at like the main menu, and in the main menu you can spectate high elo matches, and those matches, they're 6v6, so you just multiply this number of how many matches there are by 6, and that's how many players are in like high elo for this game, and that probably expands out probably 5 times as much from that number to then show a wide variety of an audience. So this game is already, in its extremely restricted state, is already fairly popular. I mean, my queue times are less than 2 minutes usually, which is a lot more than I can say sometimes for Dead by Daylight as well. Like, killer queues can get really long. But I find it really funny that I'm playing this game, an early access game, because my finished game that is nearly a decade old is so unbelievably buggy that I cannot play it right now. Deathslinger, who is my favorite killer, has his shots sometimes just randomly shoot off at a incorrect angle. Like, it shoots off from his left side, and so it'll shoot diagonally instead of straight on. Sometimes you'll fire a shot and hit somebody, and if there's like a bit of server latency, what I think I've discovered is that if there's a bit of server latency and the chain is near an obstacle while Survivor is moving, the hit gets rejected as if you had missed the Survivor entirely, even though the sound had gone off. And this was a bug that I noticed during the Blood Moon event, and it's only gotten worse ever since. Sometimes for the Survivor side as well, you won't actually see Deathslinger aiming down sights. So that's not fun to play against, and I don't want to. Not only is it unfun for me to play because the predictability of actually using the killer is so all over the place, but it also is unfun for the Survivor because now Deathslinger basically has an unknown exploit. It's not like I'm trying to aim down sights without the Survivor knowing, but that is what ends up happening a lot of the time. And then you have Demogorgon sometimes goes invisible. Unknown's hallucinations sometimes become invisible. Singularity has latency between when his pods place and also when he activates the camera. Oh my god, like, there's so many bugs going on right now, but those are the killers that I've played the most recently, and they are some of my favorite killers, but those are the bugs that I have noticed the most because Demogorgon, Deathslinger, and Singularity are, the 3Ds are the 3 killers that I play the most and that I like playing the most. And if the killers that I like playing the most are this inherently buggy, then it's just not fun to play. The other thing as well is that Orella is an extremely quiet survivor. Like, while she's injured, it sounds like she makes no grunts of pain whatsoever. And that becomes even more difficult when another one of my favorite killers to play is the Spirit, and I can't fucking hear half the lobby because they're playing Orella. And it's nothing against them. I do think that it just has to do with the audio mixing on Dead by Daylight side, on top of the fact that Were-Elk, you remember how when the Were-Elk skin for Huntress came out and its audio was super duper low? Well, that bug is back again, apparently. So it's like, there's so much going wrong with Dead by Daylight right now that even if I were to find enjoyment in playing a build and just kind of, goofing around on it, it has so many setbacks on the other side, or behind the scenes, that it becomes unfun for me to play at the moment. And I really do hope that the patch that comes out tomorrow, because this video is going to be uploaded on Wednesday afternoon/night for me, I really do hope that that update is one that fixes a lot of these bugs that we've been encountering. One of the things as well that I would like for Dead by Daylight to address is the way that they have constructed the abandonment system. So I like the abandonment system because it means that I don't have to be held hostage as a survivor if I'm being slugged on the ground, and it also means that I don't have to worry about having to hunt down bots and then put them on hooks while I'm also the killer if everyone else abandons. I think that both of those things are really good features, and it saves everyone a lot of time after the game has already basically been won by the killer side. However, the problem is that the way that the games actually resolve are so ludicrously ass backwards. Let me actually look at the Dead by Daylight Twitter page, because they explain it briefly on how the abandoned system works and going through. Oh yeah, Nemesis got kill switched. I forgot about that. Among all the other things, my goodness, my poor boy Nemesis getting kill switched because M1 perks just weren't working on him at all, which is insane to me. Okay, let me look at the DBD forums to read through how these changes work. Scenario 1. If all survivors are bots, the killer can abandon the match without receiving a disconnection penalty, and the match is considered a draw. And a draw meaning that your MMR doesn't go down. Scenario 2, if the match has continued for 10 consecutive minutes without a generator being completed or regressed, the killer can abandon the match without receiving a disconnection penalty, and the match is considered a loss. So, for killers, if all survivors are bots, before that last sacrifice goes through, there's like that animation of the third hook pulling the survivor up to the entity, and if the the killer chooses to abandon before that final animation goes through and the match actually concludes, then the killer is considered to have drawn that match. Similarly, if they choose to 4-man slug and all the survivors disconnect, because obviously they don't want to stick around to see the end of that result, or one person's dead and then the killer snowballs and slugs all three within a very quick succession, everyone disconnects, and the killer abandons the match after everyone becomes a bot, that is again considered a draw. And it's like, okay, yeah, they're not getting a win for it, that's fine. The problem is that by not having your MMR positively affected on the killer side, because you are abandoning a match that has all bots in it, you can keep yourself at the same MMR and keep farming survivors that are inexperienced and getting good results to pump yourself up. I mean, you can basically perpetually smurf at the same MMR rating for as long as you physically want because of this abandonment system. There was a game where I was playing Houndmaster on stream, and, you know, the game went really well. I got a bunch of people out. I think I 4K'd at 4 gens or something, but because it was on a Garden of Joy as well, but because the last survivor abandoned before the final one got sacrificed fully, I was allowed to abandon. So if I wanted to keep playing my Houndmaster games against these survivors that were inexperienced against the killer, I could keep abandoning matches to keep myself at that MMR and continue bullying people for the sake of good results, which isn't great. And then on top of that, if the match is continued with 10 consecutive minutes without a generator being completed, then that killer is considered a loss. Now, I understand that part of this is if a survivor team is like trying to hold you hostage by just 99ing all the gens, and then you miraculously don't have regression that touches any of the gens, it's meant to kind of counteract any hiding or any hiding strategies or any strategies that are designed to keep the killer hostage. But the thing is that on the killer side, if I choose to hold down a really tight 3-gen and survivors literally cannot touch the generators because of how good I am at keeping them off the generators, and I extend that out for 10 minutes, and then I choose to abandon, I can take a loss. I can then lose MMR and go against even easier survivors and farm even easier results. And then if everyone abandons on those easier results because I've held this tight 3-gen in the match prior to that one, then I can keep myself at that MMR because I'm abandoning now. Like, do you understand how abusable that is? The idea, the concept, and the toxicity that the system is in here to counteract has been fantastic. I really like that system, but I think that the way that the MMR changes is a system that can be easily abused as well, and that across the board this should be considered draws for the killer, which, you know, at least you're not losing MMR in the 10-minute scenario, or maybe even a slight win counts as like a 2k or like a 1k for your MMR, slight MMR increase. For survivors, the last survivor can abandon the match without receiving a disconnection penalty when all the survivors left alive in the trial are bots, or when all of them are in the dying state, and that counts as a draw. If all survivors are in the dying state, it's either because you got 4-man slugged and you would have eaten a loss anyway, or if they're all in the dying state and you're like, okay, cool, I gotta keep myself with this MMR and I don't lose anything. Or if you actually don't want to keep playing at that MMR and you want to lose because you played badly and you don't want to be playing against killers that play this way, you can't lose MMR unless you actively wait for the killer to pick you up and put you on the hook or kill you. And that sucks, because now both players are being kept here because you might want to lose MMR because you didn't deserve to win the match, but instead you can abandon and draw the match. I need to keep reiterating, because I think it needs to be made extremely clear. I think the system is good. I think avoiding 4 minutes of being slugged out on the ground is a good idea. What I don't think is good is the fact that it counts as a draw for your MMR. Because now if everyone's slugged, and you choose to abandon, and you're like, okay, good, whew, I didn't lose that match. I actually just drew according to Behavior's style of play. If 2 survivors are dead, and I knock one down, and I knock the other one down in quick succession, both of them can abandon the match, and those 2 that stayed alive longer and abandon the match because they're both slugged in the endgame, that is considered a draw? Or if I have a 3k, and I slug the last survivor, and this survivor, or knock the last survivor down, and they choose to abandon before they get sacrificed, that is considered a draw? That's not considered a loss? That seems like a massive piece of oversight. I think it should count as a slight loss in that scenario, because you did lose. As a survivor, you lost that game. That is the reality of the situation. And then the other scenarios, like when all are remaining as bots, you know, that's fine. You don't want to play a game where everyone gives up. So that if you leave and then the killer leaves, then that's a draw. And I think that's a good one. That's one I'm not going to be worried about. But being able to retain your MMR or not lose MMR because you don't want to go, either you don't want to go into lower lobbies or what have you, you can just choose to draw if you're the last one standing and then you get knocked down. That doesn't seem very well balanced. Now you're encouraging people to rat out for the end game so that they don't lose MMR and they can consistently stay in high MMR lobbies. Like, I don't know. I think that this system has a lot of oversights on what constitutes a win for either side. And I really do hope that it changes, despite the fact that it helps with a lot of the toxicity that has been involved. Completely changing topics here, I wanted to go into talking about this comment or this question that I get occasionally on, like, hey, I'm a new streamer or YouTuber, how do I grow on these platforms? And realistically, I think that well, let me start with like the actual neutral response that I would give to that. And the neutral response is to create videos that you are comfortable with making. And I know that that sounds like such a cop-out answer, but the reality of the situation is that for myself, that's what I started doing. I just did video game commentary. I talked over Dead by Daylight because that's what I had time to do, and that resonated with people, clearly. With other people, they might not be as good at commentary, or they might have a different idea of what they want to do for their YouTube content, which leads people into finding something that they actually enjoy and not doing something just because it's popular. And that's where I think that it's really important when you're making content not to make it for the sake of having an audience, but to make it for yourself, make it for your friends, have something that you want to show off to somebody else, or have something that you think is just fun to do with your spare time. And the reason that I say that is because if you try chasing a bag right off the bat, or you try just like replicating, well, not even replicating. If you just try chasing a bag like right off the bat, you're never gonna go anywhere with it because people can smell the fakeness on you. And if you try to go for the bag right away, you've also skipped out on all the important steps and the important learning experiences of actually becoming a good content creator. A mistake that I commonly see new content creators make, or smaller ones, smaller than me, 6,000 subscribers here. I know that I'm a larger content creator than a lot of other people, but one of the common mistakes that I see people that are smaller than my channel do is, one, they don't know how to make thumbnails, which is the most important thing on YouTube. Two, they don't upload frequently or with a specific theme in mind. And three, they don't have great commentary. A lot of times the smaller content creators, one of the problems that they will often run into, and this is especially true on Twitch, is that they're not talking. Now I know that people will be like, well, it's hard to talk when I don't have a chat there. Then you shouldn't be streaming on Twitch to begin with. Realistically, what makes a person entertaining on Twitch is their ability to bring commentary and comedy to whatever game they're playing, whatever activity they're live streaming that day. The audience just happens to be an additional piece to work in there, but it's never going to be the central focus. And learning how to hone your ability to make commentary is going to take practice. And the thing that I do frequently that also pisses people off and makes it so that I also can't do these live commentaries for Deadlock because I get distracted all the time is to just keep talking about what you're seeing on screen and what's actually happening in the game. So for Dead by Daylight, like, alright, I'm going to throw this person on the hook here. I'm going to see if I can find someone with barbecue and chili. Yeah, there's someone on the far side here. We're just going to sprint over that way real quick. You know, like things like that, where I'm just kind of talking about my thought process and putting it, verbalizing it into words. And that way, when there's nobody viewing in chat, or when there's like one or two people, or someone new chimes in, and they're like, oh wow, this person has consistent commentary, and they're actually kind of interesting to listen to, or at least they're not trying to keep things dead. Because the worst thing that any Twitch streamer can do, especially if someone comes into chat. Now, if someone's in your chat and they say something, and that means that not only have they decided to sit through ads, they thought that your profile looked interesting, and they are actively choosing to engage with you. They're actively choosing to make themselves known to your presence, or make their presence known to you. And if it's like, someone comes in and they're like, hey, Kai, how's it going? It's like, oh, hey, it's going great. And then you follow up with nothing for 30 seconds afterwards, that gets kind of boring. That will drive anybody away. And so my tip for commentary in that sense, if you have somebody in your chat, is to start asking questions or filling somebody in. This is what I do with raids especially, is filling somebody in with what you're doing at the moment. So if I get a raid from someone like, hey, welcome in, raiders, we were just talking about this, or this is how this game is going, or to the person who raided, what were you playing? How are your games? Do you normally play this? And then, you know, making it an actual conversation in a way, instead of just being like, oh, hey, what's up? Welcome in. And then just sitting there and saying nothing. That is where a lot of smaller streamers will never grow, because they're not actively choosing to engage with their audience. Now, the cynical side of it is that I think that a lot of people ask me that question because they want to know how to grow quick. And then I really have no answer for you in that sense. I don't hold the secrets of what makes a good content creator. All I can tell you is what I've experienced, and also what pisses me off about streamers sometimes. Which I know is a terrible thing to say. I like dragging other people down, but I really do think that there's a significant portion of Dead by Daylight streamers who do not know how to maintain consistent commentary, and will just quietly talk under their breath, or not actually engage with their audience. And so as long as you're not doing that and you're actually using multiple platforms to promote yourself, because most of my Twitch growth has been through my YouTube channel, that's where you're going to find the most growth. But you have to put the time in, you have to put the hours aside to record, to edit, to make a thumbnail, make a convincing commentary, and a convincing title. Because I think that a lot of my viewership is always going to be off of how good my thumbnail and title is. That's just the reality of the matter. And so as soon as you figure those things out, I think that YouTubing goes a little bit smoother, but I can't tell you what to do directly, but I can only tell you what's worked for me and that you should adapt it to your own style. So, yeah, that's, I guess that's like all the things I really wanted to go through today, because they were things that have been, they are things that have been weighing on my mind a lot recently, and I just wanted to talk into a microphone for close to half an hour. So thanks for listening to me talk. Hopefully this patch on Thursday resolves a lot of the bugs. I mean, I'm still going to be making a Dead by Daylight commentary this week at some juncture, but as it stands now, I think I'm going to be, you know, sitting on the sidelines. Going to wait to see what happens tomorrow, and hopefully everything is resolved and we'll all be happy, or at least Deathslinger's problems are resolved. That would be nice. Anyway, thanks for listening, fellas. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and goodbye.